Social capital is the glue that holds society together and the lubricant that keeps it running effectively. Without it, society simply cannot work. In this episode, I'll try to explain what social capital is and how to measure it by describing social capital as a general concept, constructing a generic model of social capital, describing the analysis of the parts of the model and synthesis of the whole, using a group of friends as an example of how to analyse, synthesise and measure social capital, and looking at the impact of social capital when different parts of society interact. Capital is a set of assets, and assets are things which have the potential to be useful. Assets are accumulated by human activity and are used by humans to satisfy their needs. As we learn from experience, we adapt our behaviour to increase satisfaction. Capital takes many forms, the most familiar of which is financial capital. Financial assets are cash deposits and loans. They are accumulated by inheritance, work or borrowing, and they are used to purchase a wide range of things which satisfy our needs. Social capital is one of several different types of capital which we use in combination to satisfy our needs and improve our quality of life. We can define social capital as a set of beneficial assets which are the emergent properties of relationships between social actors. The assets are accumulated by interaction, and the actors satisfy their needs by being in the relationships. The definition places the three elements of capital into a social context, but the parts need to be explained. An actor is an autonomous agent, an entity which chooses how to act, learns from experience, and adapts its behaviour in its own best interests. Social actors can be individuals, group, organisations, institutions, or states. A social situation is one where actors come together with the opportunity for interaction, relationship building, and the accumulation of social capital. In modern societies, there's a wide variety of such situations. A relationship is a connection between two actors. It ranges from strong, as in a married couple, to weak, as in a shopper and a shop assistant. It can be egalitarian. Both actors are of the same status as in Friends, or authoritarian. The actors are of unequal status as in a teacher and pupil. It can be mutual, the same for both actors as with work colleagues, or distinct, different for each actor as in social media posters and followers. A good sample of human needs can be found in Maslow's hierarchy of motivational needs. Although these are individual needs, many of them can only be realised in a social context or are satisfied much more effectively by cooperating with others. Interaction is an exchange between an actor and a reactor. The actor acts in their own best interests to satisfy their needs. The reactor responds positively to actions they judge to be pro-actions because they satisfy the reactor's needs. They respond negatively to actions they judge to be anti-actions because they don't satisfy their needs. Over time, norms are established and interactions become predominantly pro-actions with positive responses. Beneficial assets of social capital which are used to satisfy needs include collaboration, collectively deciding purpose, objectives and plans, coordination, organising people so that they act together effectively, cooperation, acting together to achieve a shared objective, cohesion, sticking together as a united whole, trust, relying on the integrity of others, alignment, all pulling in the same direction, norms, accepted standards of behaviour, allegiance, loyalty to the relationship, connection, access to others for support and information, and community, having a distinct identity and culture. Not all of these assets will apply to every situation, but some will apply to every one. To make use of the assets, an actor simply needs to be an active participant in the relationship. A generic model shows how all that comes together. The type of relationship, the number of actors, and the number of connections determine the potential for social capital. Dependence on others for the satisfaction of needs motivates interaction, and the greater the need, the more interaction there is. Pro-actions with positive responses increase actual social capital, and anti-actions with negative responses reduce it. Actors adapt their behaviours through experience and learn from responses. As behaviour adapts, relationships strengthen and assets increase. As assets increase, satisfaction rises and interaction increases. One way to think about social capital is as a bucket of assets, which are the property of a pair of actors. The type of relationship determines the size of the bucket, the potential for social capital, and the behaviour of the actors determines how full the bucket gets, how much social capital there is in practice. Pro-actions and positive responses fill it up, and anti-actions and negative responses empty it. Increasing the number of actors and connections increases the potential for social capital in a group. There are many different social situations, different actors, different needs, and different behaviours in a complex modern society. It's that complexity which makes social capital difficult to understand. Sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. The best approach is to look at each situation separately and then consider them in combination. Applying the generic model to a particular situation is a two-part process. The first part is to analyse the parts, and the second is to synthesise the whole. Analysis begins by answering questions about the situation and its parts. What is the situation? Who are the actors? What is their relationship? What are their needs? What assets satisfy those needs? How interdependent are the actors? What behaviour helps or hinders the accumulation of assets? Once we've analysed the parts, we can synthesise the whole using computer modelling to show how the parts interact. System models simulate the dynamics of social capital, how social capital varies over time as the actors adapt their behaviour. Network models allow us to measure social capital at the individual and group level. Agent-based models combine the dynamics of system models and the metrics of network models to give us a complete picture. When we're satisfied that we have accurate representation of the situation, we can use the models to simulate interventions and decide how to increase the satisfaction of needs without unforeseen consequences or side effects. We'll use a group of friends as an example of a social situation. We'll analyse the parts by answering the questions we asked earlier, and then we'll synthesise the whole using computer models. What is the situation? A group of friends is an informal social group with no hierarchy or authority. There are no written rules, regulations, roles or responsibilities. Who are the actors? The actors are individuals who come into contact with one another because they have something in common and form an affiliation. What is their relationship? Friends have a mutual, strong and egalitarian relationship. It has high potential for social capital. What are the actors' needs? Selecting appropriate needs from Maslow's hierarchy, they are acceptance, respect of others, friendship, and a sense of connection. What assets satisfy the needs? Selecting from the list we had earlier, the assets which satisfy those needs are cohesion, trust, connections and allegiance. How interdependent are the actors? Individuals in the group are mutually dependent on each other's actions for the satisfaction of their needs. The needs cannot be met in any other way. What behaviour helps or hinders the accumulation of assets? Friendly actions and positive responses increase social capital and the satisfaction of needs. Unfriendly actions and negative responses reduce social capital and the satisfaction of needs. Over time, with sufficient interaction, the group establishes norms for friendly and unfriendly behaviour. The examples here are typical norms for a group of friends, but each group will have its own norms, and they can differ considerably. Now that we've analysed the parts, we can synthesise the whole by connecting the parts into computer models. We'll begin with system models. Firstly, we'll build a causal loop model, which is qualitative, and then we'll follow that with a stock and flow model, which is quantitative. The relationship, number of individuals and the number of friends each individual has determine the maximum capital of the group. The arrows show the direction of cause and effect, and the plus and minus signs show whether the effect is in the same or opposite direction as the cause. For example, in this case, an increase in the number of individuals or friendships causes an increase in the potential for social capital. As the group interacts, assets increase with friendly actions and positive responses, and reduce with unfriendly actions and negative responses. The ratio of friendly to unfriendly actions determines whether assets rise or fall. The high level of interdependence means that the rate of interaction and the rate of change of social capital is relatively fast. The assets of cohesion, trust, connections and allegiance satisfy the needs of acceptance, the respect of others, friendship and a sense of connection. Greater satisfaction of needs motivates individuals to increase interaction in pursuit of even more satisfaction. The stock and flow model replicates the causal loop model and quantifies the relationship. The stock in the model is social capital, and the flows are friendly and unfriendly actions which increase and decrease social capital. The model uses a game theory approach to determine whether actions are friendly or unfriendly. The inputs are the relationship, number of individuals in the group, the number of friends, the level of interdependence, the level of response to friendly actions, and the level of response to unfriendly actions. The model synthesises the dynamics of the social capital system, how it changes over time if any of the inputs change. The outputs are graphs showing maximum and actual social capital, and social capital as a percentage of the maximum. We begin the simulation with two individuals who are friends. We know that in friendships the relationship has a high potential for social capital at 90%, and that interdependence is also high at 90%. With 50% level of response, there is very little social capital and nothing changes over time. Increasing the number of individuals increases the potential for social capital, but because of the level of response, actual social capital does not increase. Increasing the levels of positive and negative response gradually to 70% causes an increase in friendly behaviour and a decrease in unfriendly behaviour, and social capital rises to the maximum. However, we get a very different outcome if we start with a highly connected group, reaction at 80% and gradually reducing to 30%. Actual capital rises towards the maximum and then begins to die away, eventually reducing to zero. Friendship can disappear just as easily as it grows, sometimes much more easily. Using a stock and flow model, we can see very clearly how friendship grows and declines. System models help to understand the dynamics of friendship, but they don't measure social capital in individual friends or the group as a whole. For that, we turn to network modelling and its metrics, and we measure social capital at a point in time. A network model is constructed from nodes and edges. The nodes are friends and the edges are relationships. The width of the edge, its weight, represents the social capital in the relationship. An individual's social capital is a function of the number of connected others, the degree of the node, and the capital in the relationships, the weight of the edges connected to the node. In network modelling, this metric is called weighted degree, which is a measure of individual social capital and is reflected in the size of the node. The group's social capital is the sum of the individual capital or weighted degrees. Data for individuals, connections and capital is entered into the model as nodes, edges and weights. The Gephi application produces a visual representation of the group, with the size of each node reflecting individual social capital and the width of the edge reflecting the capital in the relationship. The application also calculates a wide range of metrics, including weighted degree and average weighted degree. An agent-based model is a programmable application that simulates the interaction of actors and outputs the emergent behaviour. It combines the dynamics of system modelling with the measuring ability of network modelling. In the model, friends interact in pairs and always act in their own best interests based on their assessment of outcomes, including the probable response of their friend. If social capital rises, friends interact more and make new connections, shown in red. If it falls, the opposite happens. We can choose the number of people, the percentage of them that are friends, and the levels of response, interdependence and relationship. We know that in a friendship group, both relationship and independence are high. The outputs show us how the friendship group develops as a network and the effect on individual and group social capital. If we set the model running, the structure of the network and levels of social capital change. At high levels of response, the number of friends and levels of friendship increase, increasing social capital and the satisfaction of needs. If levels of response reduce, the opposite happens, and at the tipping point, the group disintegrates, leaving individuals isolated with no friends at all, no social capital, and none of their social needs satisfied. What do the models suggest that we should do to increase friendship and social capital in society? Firstly, we should make facilities and activities available and make them attractive to people so that they want to come together and interact. Secondly, we should react regularly, frequently and clearly to friendly and unfriendly behaviour. Not reacting is the surest way to social disintegration. To know where we are as a society in respect of social capital and to check whether interventions are having the desired result, we must be able to measure it. How well social capital is measured in real life depends on the quality and interpretation of data. Social assets like trust, allegiance and norms are intangible, and there are no standards or instruments for measuring them. Increasingly, data from telephony and the internet helps with structure and interaction measurement, and artificial intelligence can analyse the content of communication for keywords and phrases and infer the strength of a relationship. However, much of the measurement of social capital remains subjective and is based on data obtained from the actors themselves using suitably worded questionnaires. The data is then used to calculate the magnitude of social capital. A World Bank questionnaire on social capital has almost 100 questions, many with multiple parts. Here are a few sample questions from the questionnaire. Each question focuses on one aspect of social capital, either the assets themselves, how they're accumulated, or the needs they satisfy. The responses are then analysed to assess the level of social capital. This approach to measurement works well if the questions are relevant to the social context and measurement is consistent when making comparisons between groups and the same group over time. And finally, a word of warning. High social capital is not necessarily a good thing in all cases, and society may need to intervene to decrease social capital as well as increase it. Consider a community with a mix of groups and individuals. Every group, and the community as a whole, has its social capital. Now consider the impact of social capital in two of those groups on the wider community. One is a charitable group set up to help those in need. The other is a criminal gang who survive by stealing from others. Increasing social capital in the charitable group increases social capital in the community, and increasing it in the criminal gang reduces it in the community. Individuals and groups outside the two groups benefit from high social capital in one and not the other. To maintain high social capital in the community as a whole, intervention is necessary to increase social capital in the charity and reduce it in the gang, resulting in a large increase in social capital in the community as a whole. Good and bad examples of the impact of high social capital can be found at all levels of society and in all situations where social networks interact. Although society becomes ever more complex, by methodically analysing and synthesising social capital on a situational basis, we can deal with the complexity and learn how to intervene to make society more stable and productive to the advantage of everyone.